I'm still getting the same message.
Okay.
Let me see if I can, you don't really need to see my, you don't really need to see my old face anyway. So I'm okay with that. Let me just see if I can share my screen. And then if everyone is able to see that, then we can get started with that presentation and we'll work
Okay.
on the other.
It should start now, Rob. Sorry.
Okay, let's try one more time. Well, there we go.
There you
And
go. Can see you, Rob.
there you go. And I'm sorry to disappoint, really. That was a long wait just to see this face. So thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the IN navigation service with the province of New Brunswick. This is a service that's specifically for internationally educated nurses. And so I'm just going to try to share my screen. I apologize ahead of time. My technical skills are as old as my face. So let's see what we can see here. All right. So is that screen up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
No, not seeing it?
No, I
No,
can't see anything yet.
Okay. Let me back out. All right, let's try one more time here.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. Let me start that from the beginning and we'll be good to go. All right. So with respect to having international credentials recognized, we certainly understand that it's a very complicated process. It can often be very overwhelming. It includes a large variety of stakeholders and regulatory boards, training institutions. The screen that you're seeing right now is literally just a quick snapshot of an entire group of acronyms and words that any internationally educated nurse would run into if they were to try to get registered in Canada, and in particularly in this case in New Brunswick. So with all of that in mind, the New Brunswick government has many initiatives designed to assist anyone who's looking to have their previous training recognized. And one of those is, in fact, the IN navigation service. Now, for some of you, you will recognize and know some of the information that I'm going to share. So I'll go through it rather quickly, but I am here for questions. And at the end, certainly we'll leave contact information so that you can continue to reach out to me as you go through this process, should you start to choose to do that. In Canada, healthcare is really a team approach. It often involves a wide range of highly specialized professionals, all working to provide the best holistic care that they can for any particular individual patient's needs. At nurses at various levels play an integrated role in this delivery of service and encompass a wide range of responsibilities that are carried out by both regulated and unregulated members of a nursing team. In general, nursing is divided into specific designations. For foreign credential assessment, these fall under three categories: registered nurse, a licensed practical nurse, and a resident attendant, or in many cases referred to as a personal support worker. The level of experience, length of required training, and specific responsibilities assigned to each of these three categories reflects the scope of practice that's required of them. This applies to all healthcare settings, whether it's acute or long-term care. Both RNs and LPNs are regulated professions. In New Brunswick, there are separate associations which maintain a membership of individuals who are eligible to practice that profession in this province. Part of the process an IEN must undertake involves meeting the criteria that these associations, regulatory boards, set out for licensing purposes. PSWs are not a regulated profession in New Brunswick and do not require a full credential assessment prior to the individual practicing under that designation. Typically, these positions are in long-term care settings as residence attendants and in some cases acute care settings, all involving the daily needs of patients during their time under treatment. In order to fully understand the process for an IE and become registered to practice in New Brunswick, in fact, anywhere in Canada as a whole, it's easiest to look at a series of steps, each one leading to the next. It begins with an advisory report, which is the NNAS, and ends with a license to practice. In the case of RNs, that's an NCLEX. By using the IEN navigation service, we can look at all the pieces involved and help you to begin to make some sense of all these steps that are on the screen in front of you and how they flow from one to the other. Each of the steps has a number of tasks which must be achieved and submitted before moving on to the next. And by looking at each task in more detail, we can start to better understand how to proceed through the entire process. Beginning with the NNAS report, which is always the first step for an IEN wanting to work as an RN or an LPN in Canada. Applicants file an application directly through the NNAS website. Supporting documents must be submitted, and these include all records of employment in the nursing field, either in Canada or abroad, English test results, either IELTS, academic, or CELBAN, and all post-secondary training records. Please know that these documents must come directly from the institution which issues them. NNAS does not recognize a WES evaluation, nor does it accept IELTS general for any other test of English language other than those two that I just mentioned. The NNAS advisory report is basically a verification of your credentials and a comparison of your complete background to that of a nurse trained here in Canada. Once completed, NNAS will send the results to the Provincial Regulatory Board, and for this case, it would be NANB, the Nurses Association of New Brunswick, as they are the ones who look after the registered nurses in this province. In addition to filing an application to NNAS, you'll need to file an application with NANB. Once you've applied to NANB and they have received the results of your NNAS advisory report, NANB will notify you of their decision for your next steps. The results of the NNAS advisory report will state equivalent or not equivalent. While in rare exceptions, some candidates may be issued a direct route to registration, for most IENs, the NNAS advisory report will identify specific areas where additional training specific to the scope of practice in Canada will need to be addressed prior to practicing as an RN. Based on the results of the advisory report, NANB will determine what additional training is needed to meet the licensing requirements and may recommend a further credential assessment, which indicates what courses and potentially what clinical classes must be completed. For some candidates, the NNAS advisory report may indicate significant differences between the training they have previously completed and what is required to practice in Canada. In these cases, NANB will advise the candidate that a full retraining program is required. In such instances, the candidate would not qualify to register immediately, but certainly the navigation service is still here to help with the various steps that you have to take. And we also recommend through the navigation service that candidates normally would apply for a dual report through NNAS, both as an RN and an LPN. This provides the best overall coverage of your current training and experience as it compares the scope of practice for a Canadian trained nurse or LPN. And this will allow you to move forward more quickly should your assessment not be at the level that you anticipated it might be. If required by NANB, an NCAS assessment of 2 to 3 days is carried out for New Brunswick applicants by RMPDC in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The results of the NCAS assessment will determine which of the 13 courses within the bridging program you would need to complete. For New Brunswick, these bridging courses are delivered by the New Brunswick Community College through the NB CRIB program. Each course has variable start dates throughout the year. Most of the curriculum is covered through instructor-led online delivery, with some clinicals required. These require you to be on-site in person. And for anyone who may be joining us from outside of New Brunswick tonight, just to note, NBCC during the pandemic, a situation that we are currently in, has initiated a new criteria in that you must be in province in New Brunswick to enroll in their program. And that's because they don't want any individual to take one of the courses, get to the end and not be able to complete the clinical, and in terms of not being able to travel here to do so. Once all required courses are successfully passed, NANB will then provide permission for you to write the National Licenses Exam, the NCLEX. This exam is a license to practice, not a credential assessment. As such, if you have successfully taken the NCLEX in the past, you won't be required to rewrite it, but you will still need to complete all of the requirements previously outlined and be successfully registered with NANB before you can be employed as an RN in New Brunswick. INs who might be looking to undertake the credential recognition process, as we've just outlined, should estimate a timeline of 10 to 29 months for completion. And the total cost for credential recognition, looking at all of the pieces that I've just described here in those 4 categories on the left-hand side of your screen, those will vary depending on the depth of the gap of training and the assessment that's maybe required. But in totals will normally range from approximately 5,000 to 12,600 Canadian dollars. So we just covered a great deal of information very quickly. For any of you who may have started this process, you understand the depth of what we've just covered at a very high level. And as I said, my email is on the screen right now, IENIFE navigation@gnb.ca. And send me an email if you have any additional questions that we're not able to answer tonight. I'm happy to touch base with you at any time. Nicole, I'll stop the share and move it back over to you.
Sure. Does anyone have any immediate questions they want to ask Rob? We just have 5 minutes for that before I move on to my presentation. So just be mindful. There will be time for discussion and questions after my presentation as well. But I just wanted to give you the opportunity now. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
I'm sorry. It's just a quick question, Mr. Rob. It's just because I underwent Nnas already, and just like I'm waiting for my IELTS. But then the problem is there are no IELTS schedule for now. And the thing is, I'm worried about Nnas because my there will be a my registration is being expired. So I don't know if it's really true that let's say, like, for example, you had your report from like other provinces. Let's say, like, for example, Ontario is or would that be a great basis for you, or would you accept that particular report from other provinces?
Those are great questions. First, let's start with the language test in terms of expiration dates. What I would suggest there is if you go to NNAS's site and sign into your page, you'll be able to contact the advisor that's applied directly to you. And during the pandemic situation, they have been able to extend the timelines So that can get you a little bit more time. So it certainly would encourage you to do that. And the other piece of that that you've asked about is with respect to the difference between New Brunswick and Ontario. Ontario, as many of you may know, does allow the language test to not be included or not be at the level required for the NNAS advisory report, and that advisory report can still get issued. But keep in mind that it is issued to the Ontario regulator. You also have a copy of it, but because for our regulator to look at that report, they need to have it issued directly to them. And NNAS cannot issue it to New Brunswick without the language test. Ontario is the only province that will allow that advisory report to be issued without the language test. However, keep in mind, this does not mean that Ontario is waiving the language requirement. You still have to prove it in other ways and at later stages in the process. So with that in mind, the New Brunswick regulator is looking at making changes to their requirements to allow that same type of processing. They have already taken it to their board and it is under consideration. But at this point in time, I can't say to you that it's actually in place. All I can say is that they still have to have IELTS, academic, or CELBAN before that advisory report will be released. So my best advice is to go to your sign-in page, explain the situation that you're concerned about, and see what you get for an answer. But I will also encourage you that if you're having any problems and you're not getting, you don't feel that you're able to move forward, please touch base with me and I can ask questions on your behalf.
That's better, Rob. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So I will move forward with my presentation. As I said, it's a very short presentation and we'll have a lot of time for discussion and question afterwards. So I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. Can you see it? Yes, no? Okay.
Yes, you're finishing there.
So I am basically presenting a financial support opportunity for all newcomers who are permanent residents or already Canadian citizens and need financial support to help them get their credentials recognized or help them finish some studies, courses, and programs in New Brunswick to be able to work in the field of your choice. So today we are partnering with Rob to give a very specific information session for internationally educated nurses. So if you do need financial support, as Rob said, the process can cost to up to $13,000. So this is a great way for us to support you in achieving your professional goals and work in New Brunswick in the profession of your choice. So the Atlantic Immigrant Career Loan Fund is a federal program. So it is funded by the Government of Canada, and it's in partnership with the Royal Bank of Canada, who's the financial partner. On the Atlantic level, so regionally in all the Atlantic provinces, ISANS, the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, they are managing this program. However, in New Brunswick, we are 4 organizations that are able to give this service. And obviously, we are partnering with ISANS. So if you are in the region of Fredericton, the Multicultural Association of Fredericton is able to give the AICLF. If you're in the St. John region, it would be through the YMCA Newcomer Connections. If you're in Moncton region, it would be through MAGMA, the Multicultural Association of Greater Moncton Area. And if you're anywhere else in the province, so anywhere other than the 3 cities, it would be through the New Brunswick Multicultural Council, who who is my organization. So I'm the AICLF coordinator at NBMC, and I would be the one helping you through the process. So as I mentioned, it is a federal program. So unfortunately, only permanent residents and Canadian citizens are admissible to the program. You do need to have competencies in English or French that are specific for your profession. That being said, if you haven't taken already your IELTS test or your CELBAN and you're taking either courses or you're about to take the test, you can use the funds from this program to cover the cost of any language tests or language courses. So it would be worked through the action plan that we developed with you. If also, you are not already a client of your local multicultural association. It is a criteria for eligibility. So, for example, if you're in Miramichi, we would need you to be a client of the Miramichi Regional Multicultural Association. So that membership to your local association is at no charge at all. It's completely free. However, they did put it as a condition to be eligible for the program. And obviously, you need to be in good financial condition. So, not being bankrupt, not having a lot of debt as well. So, your income to debt ratio needs to be good. But all of that on the financial side is determined by the bank. So, I have no say on the financial aspect. My job is really to see if you're eligible, see if you're a good candidate, and then walk you through the process and help you submit a file to the bank to be approved for this. So as I mentioned, international students and temporary foreign workers are unfortunately not eligible, but I do present it to everybody because sometimes depending on your situation, it could take some time to put together all the documents that you need and everything. So I present it to everyone just so they know that the opportunity is there and it's if you want to start off like putting together documents, then it's great. So then the first when you have your permanent residency, first thing you can just simply submit an application very easily. So another thing I want to mention is that this program doesn't cover any programs that are eligible for student loans. So as you know, student loans are also provided by the federal government, and the AICLF is not there to compete with that, but really it's there to fill in the gaps that are not covered by a student loan. And there's a lot of programs that are not, and a lot of the programs that immigrant wants to take aren't covered by student loan, or maybe the immigrant isn't eligible for student loan, even though their program is. So the AICLF is there really to fill those gaps. So how you would know that is either through the webpage of the program you're looking into, or by talking to anybody through admissions. So um, that's it. So in terms of how you can use the money that you get from the AICLF, it's extremely flexible. It covers everything that is related to your education. So everything that's related to that process, whether it's professional registration fees, accreditation exam fees, the cost for tuition or continuing education, if you need to travel to take an exam, if you need to travel to take a course, you need to rent a car, fill up on gas, rent a hotel room. Obviously now with COVID, that's not happening as much, but hopefully post-COVID, everything will be back. So it does cover those costs. If you need to get books or any study materials, it also costs. The cost is also covered through this pile of money. In the case where you're working already and you need to take some time off work to study and do an exam or finish a course, we do provide short-term living expenses to the amount of $1,200 a month for a period of 3 months maximum. So it's not a big sum, but it's still something, and it is there again to support you through that. So if you do need to take some time off work, you would know that you have at least $1,200 coming into your bank account and to support you for that. But again, it's for 3 months maximum. So every loan application can approve up to $15,000 maximum, and it all depends on how much money you actually need. As I mentioned before, it would be that would be assessed through an action plan. So we would put together step by step what you would want the money for. So details about the program, the start date, end date, all the costs that's associated with it. And it really is a step by step. So it's $15,000 maximum, and the interest rate is the RBC prime rate plus 1%. The RBC prime changes all the time. Right now is at its lowest, or at least I know, a couple of days ago it was at its lowest at 2.45. So if you add 1% to that, your interest rate would only be 3.45%, which is very affordable. It's very competitive compared to other loans. Really, this loan was made to help newcomers, and we do know that you face particular barriers. So we wanted to make it as affordable for you as possible. So as I mentioned before, the first step is to put together that action plan, and I would be supporting you in that as well. We would get it approved on our end, and then if it is approved, we would give you an application form, which you would need to fill and attach any supporting documents that you need. So whether that's diplomas from back home, whether that's ID, so identification. We need 2 types of identification, whether it's references. We have a list that we would be going through together. So it does depend on your particular situation. But once everything is put together, we would approve the application, and then we would send it to RBC. Once the bank has it, they review your file, and they would look at your financial situation. And if they feel like you're a good candidate, you're in good financial standing, they will request a meeting with you. So during that meeting, they would discuss everything. So going from your financials to, how much you would be paying back per month, everything would be tailored to your particular financial situation. And if everything is good, then you would sign an agreement with them. That meeting is only between you and the RBC representative. So I won't know any details about your financial situation. That's completely confidential. In some cases, the participant did want the coordinator there with them for support and language purposes. So I'm more than happy to be there, but if you don't specify that, then that meeting is completely confidential between you and the bank representative. So after that, I would follow you through the process, and basically I would be your link with the bank. That in-person meeting is one time only. And even now during COVID, I don't think it's in person, it's virtual. But that remains to be confirmed. We haven't had anybody apply during COVID so far. At least I don't think in New Brunswick, but I might be wrong. So otherwise, I would be the one following you, making sure you're completing all the steps in the action plan. And I would be the one telling the bank to release more money to you. So if you're approved for 10,000, they won't give you the 10,000 right away. They give it to you by chunks, depending on your action plan. So it's 3 chunks maximum. So let's say during the first period, you're finishing a certain course, then they would release to you, for example, $2,000. So once you pass your exam, you're done with that part of the action plan. They release to you the second amount, and so on. So in terms of the monthly fees, given that it is a loan, we see that we have 3 periods basically in the program. The first period is the studies period, where you're finishing your action plan. You're doing, everything, the steps that you delineated. You're taking the courses, you're taking the exams, all of that. During that time, you only pay interest. And you only pay interest on the funds that are released to you. So like I said, not all the money comes at once. So if at the beginning you're only given $2,000, you would only be paying interest on the $2,000, not the 10,000 total that they will be giving you. So that makes it more affordable. So you would only be paying that interest on the amount that's given to you. And then once you're done your study period, you would have used up all the money that you've been approved for. We give you a 6 months grace period. So it's kind of like a 6 months almost break for you to stabilize yourself, find a job. It's just a transition period for you. So during that time, you would still only be paying the interest amount. And then you would enter the payment period. So you would have agreed on an amount per month to pay. That agreement would be with the bank during that first meeting. So everything is dealt with off the bat. And that amount of money that you would pay per month would be the capital plus interest, and it's different for everyone. So it depends on your financial situation, how much you're comfortable paying per month. The bank doesn't want to break you, right? So they want to make sure you're easily paying back that amount, and you have 4 years maximum to repay. So if you are a person who does need 4 years to pay back a loan, it is possible, but again, it's only depends on your financial situation, and it would be cleared with the bank themselves. So one last thing that I would want to say is that given that it's an Atlantic program, it's only available in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and PEI. So if you do decide to leave Atlantic Canada, you would enter the repayment period. So that would be that third chunk there, where you're paying the principal plus the interest. If you decide to leave Canada altogether, you would need to repay the entire loan before you leave. So obviously it's a loan. Unfortunately, it's not a grant. So you would need to repay everything before you leave Canada. So the last thing I would want to add is that if you are someone who's already started the process, if you've already paid for tuition, books, anything like that within the last 6 months, this program would reimburse you that amount of money. So as long as you have the receipts, it would reimburse that amount. And like I said, I would be following you throughout, and I would be collecting receipts on all the spending. So we want to make sure that the money is spent in the right places for this program. So other than that, it should be a very smooth transition. We've had up to 10 or even more approved so far in New Brunswick. So it's a good option if you are looking for support in that area. So with that, my presentation is ended, and we have lots of time for questions. So we have approximately 45 minutes. So I open up the floor. You can either ask questions to me or to Rob. So.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate those insights. But I do understand that this is in support of the Canadian residents and citizens. However, I would like to know if you do have also for international students who are already in Canada, or those who are planning to come to Canada as an international student.
No, not right now. Unfortunately, federal programs are only for permanent residents or Canadian citizens, and we don't have anything at the moment for that. Unfortunately,
Okay.
yeah. But if anything
Thank
comes
you.
up, it will be promoted. I guarantee you. So.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I'll just add to that, that although financial assistance is not necessarily there for those who don't already have PR or are here on a student visa, certainly the navigation service is free of charge, and we are here to help if we can, and as you go through the process. So we're always happy to advocate for you and to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, and one thing also I would add to Rob's comment is that even though maybe nothing is offered on the federal level, sometimes the provincial government will have financial support opportunities for international students or temporary foreign workers as well. So I would look for those. And nothing comes to mind at the moment for me, but I'm certain that there would be something on their website. And if not, then there isn't at the moment. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, Nicole. Just a clarification, it's just because from the start of your presentation, you were mentioning about the requirements on how to get that particular loan. The thing is, you have enumerated there. One that you had enumerated or mentioned is the English proficiency. Does it mean that you require for IELTS as well, or do you have a certain English exams like
No.
what Magma was offering?
Yes, so to be honest with you, it is there listed as a criteria.
Okay.
However, they have been flexible about that. So it all depends on the job that you want to do. So certain jobs need certain English or French level proficiencies. For nursing, you certainly need that. If you don't already have it, then the program can help you get it. So it can be a step in your plan. So it does. So the goal really is for you at the end of this, at the end of the study period, is for you to be able to work, right? So as a nurse, you need that IELTS test, right? You need that language proficiency. So it needs to be a step in the action plan to do if you don't already have it. And if you already have it, then we need the certificate that shows that you do.
I understand it. The thing is, due to pandemic, we've got there were no schedules of IELTS exam or either CELBAN. We're waiting actually for CELBAN because they are, I think, migrating to a process wherein it will be online. But for now, we still don't have any news or update about it.
Yeah.
That's the only concern. It's just like everything's getting, I mean, tough, and our processing of documents is being, or I should say staggered, just because it stopped immediately, and we don't have any schedule for IELTS or CELBAN either. So that's the only thing that's my concern.
Yeah, no, it's completely understandable. The pandemic has brought forward so many challenges, and none of us were prepared for it. And even our program isn't prepared for it. The language is a piece in there, so it's for those professions that do need it. It's a shame, and patience is a virtue. So be patient. It's easy to say but hard to do, right? So
well, the thing there that concerns most of us will be since we're having a hard time on the processing, and it's taking much of our time. I think, Rob, you are particular as well with safe practice. Is the New Brunswick particular with the safe practice as same as with Ontario? Rob?
Yes.
Oh.
So I'm just going to ask safe practice. Can you provide just a bit more detail?
This is just like I'm sorry, I'm referring to Ontario. It's just because since everyone in here, or some of it had processed their applications in Ontario. It's just because they're waiving their English exam. It's not that we don't want to take the English exam, but then we want to have a progress on our application in NAS.
Okay.
That's why we are doing that thing.
So you're talking about safe practice in terms of your maintaining your hours and.
True.
Yeah, okay.
True.
Yep. No, I understand now. Yes, it's just part of the situation that we're all dealing with, as Nicole indicated, and the delays of the COVID-19 pandemic just add complications to a process that we do recognize is already very complicated. And it's causing delays for many of you. And so what we're trying to do, and the only thing that we can do, because the regulations are there, they're at a national level, we are working with you as individuals. So as things come up, touch base with me and I can take your case forward. There's no sort of blanket solution, unfortunately. So just continue to ask for your patience, but to let you know that we are here to help, and we will look at each case. We have made some great strides with both the LPN Association and the Registered Nurses Association in terms of them providing greater flexibility due to the current situation. Their messaging is changing slowly, but it is changing. And in both cases, those associations have some incredible staff right now that are working very hard with the IEN files. So as I've said, continue to, if you're already in touch with me, I have a database of about 300 IENs that I am working with. And much of that has expanded in just the last few months. So if I had talked to you 2 months ago, that database would have been around 100 to 150, and I pretty much knew everyone's name. Now, because it has doubled, my ability to connect the name immediately to the case has become a little less. So as I said, I appreciate your patience and reach out to me. And I will answer your questions, I guarantee.
All right. Thank you so much, Rob.
Okay.
Thanks, Nicole.
Any other questions? We have time.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good night, Rob and Nicole.
Hello.
Thank you so much for all information that you guys provide. So I just wondering, is the government providing to the international nurses this loan, doing the most their reports are not equivalent, meaning coming back to school, or because you guys are awesome? It's just a curiosity.
Do you want me to take that one, Nicole?
Yeah.
Okay. So with respect to the NNAS report, Canada, as many of you know, is a bit unique. So when it comes to the scope of practice of a nurse, in many other countries, the nurse may defer to another member of the team when a decision needs to be made. And that could be as simple as that they would look at the doctor and say, "Doctor, what do you want us to do next?" In Canada, the scope of practice is much broader for nursing, which I know that you are aware of. And oftentimes the team is looking at the nurse and saying, what do we do next? So with that in mind, the credential process looks at how does your training and background compare to that of a nurse who's trained and experienced in Canada. Many other countries, including the US, train nurses as specialists. In Canada, we train as generalists. So all of that ground has to be covered. But all of that to say that yes, you may very well get an NNAS report that says not equivalent, but don't be disheartened by that. That does not mean that you aren't a nurse or that you can't practice in Canada. All that means is that simple statement of not equivalent. Equivalent being the keyword. The regulatory board, NANB, will still consider that report. It doesn't mean that they will say, oh, that person can never be a nurse here. What they will do is then they will look at that full report and they'll come to one of two decisions. First, they will say, this person is being, the advisory report is saying not equivalent, but it's in these specific areas. Our GAP training, the NB CRIB program, provides the exact training that this individual needs. So if they take these courses, then they can move forward. Or the regulatory board will say, okay, we can't identify where these gaps really are. Therefore, we want this person to go through a full assessment. And that usually means, as I said earlier, that you're going to Halifax for 2 days and you'll do a series of simulated assessments. So just like you might, if you were, doing a clinical lab, you will be given a scenario and asked to respond. You'll do a series of those over 2 days. That assessment will then say, these are the courses that individual needs to take. Now, the third option is the regulatory board may simply say, this report indicates that this individual has some gaps. They're in several different areas, but we know that the assessment is not going to show anything different. It's still going to show that this individual has significant gaps. Therefore, we're just going to recommend immediately, without the assessment, that the person take the full bridging program. And in that case, it would be all 13 of those courses. So I know that getting that piece of paper back, and I'm sorry that I'm belating this, but I've gotten papers back that have told me something I didn't like, and I know what that feels like. And it can be very disheartening and very disappointing. But that's, in this case, it's not the end. It's only a further definition of what you need to do to go forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Also, I wanted to add that the AICLF on our end is not uniquely for people who are trying to get their credentials recognized to be able to work. So it's for really for any newcomer who's looking to take training or any education to be able to work in New Brunswick. So it's not just for foreign credential recognition. Also, we have a question in the chat that I want to share. It's from Anna, and Anna says she knows that this webinar is specifically for IENs, but she is a doctor or an IMG, International Medical Graduate, and she's asking if the fund can also be for the process of accreditation for MDs, or if she decides to be an LPN later on. Yes, so like I mentioned, it's for everything for everyone. So it does fund the process for accreditations for doctors. Okay.
And
Any
Nicole,
other questions? Yeah.
sorry,
No.
can I just add to that for Anna's question? Anna, please feel free, if you haven't already. My role is specifically for internationally educated nurses, but I work with many international files because the nature of our team is very collective. So right next door to my office is the office for physicians, and there is an email called nbmed, nbmed at gnb.ca. And so if you haven't already been in touch with them, I would encourage you to reach out. The process for physicians, as you're probably aware, is very, very different than it is for nurses. But that team can certainly be a great resource for you.
Yep. Rob, do you mind maybe writing the email in the chat box for everybody?
Sure will.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group?
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
My name is Philip. Thanks for making out time to orient us or to educate us about all these resources available for internationally educated nurses. My question is a little bit direct. Is this fund available for nurses who started their programs in maybe another province, let's say like BC, but they are currently residents in New Brunswick and they wish to transfer their licenses back to New Brunswick when they finally get their pass their NCLEX? So will this fund be available to offset all the bills they incurred while studying in BC or any other province, although they are still residents in New Brunswick as we speak?
That's a good question, Philip. I would say if the cost has been within the last 6 months and you have the receipt, then it would reimburse those. But that being said, we have not had that experience yet. We haven't had someone residing in New Brunswick and studying at an institution that's based outside, or coming from BC after studying there and wanting to get the fund. So I don't necessarily know. That could be something that I go back to iSense to ask. So it would be a very particular case, I have to say. Normally, all the applicants have been studying within the Atlantic provinces. So I can say that within the Atlantic provinces, it would be easier than if it were from BC, because this is an Atlantic program.
Okay, thank you. Well, in my own case, I actually started in PEI. Then at some point, government withdrew funding and the programs could not go on. So I wanted to save time, and then I transferred my whole process to BC, where I came from. And I'm already towards the end of the whole program, but now I'm back to New Brunswick. So I'm just wondering if it will fall under the fund, like meet the requirements for this.
Yeah, it could be something that we look into. So if you are interested, I would suggest, can I ask where you are in New Brunswick?
In Fredericton.
In Fredericton, okay. So after this session, what I will be doing is sending everyone the recording of the session, but also contact information for the AICLF coordinators in the 3 cities. So if you are interested, I would suggest that you contact them directly. Also, you will have my email. So if you don't receive an answer, or if you're not in any of the 3 cities, please feel free to contact me. And then we would be working with you on an individual basis. So reviewing your situation and going forward through that.
All right, thank you very much. Then I have a second question, and this goes to Rob. My question is, I have a friend who got her advisory report back from Nnas, and it says it's not comparable. Well, she is applying to NEMB. So she's really concerned because she studied outside of Canada, and there is no way her education and skill will be comparable to Canadian education and skill. And she was asked to go do the 2 days assessment exams in Halifax. And she went back and forth with NAMB, arguing and trying to prove a point that NNAS has said my credentials are not comparable. So I've not worked in the hospital in Canada. I don't have Canadian RN experience. So how do you want me to meet the identified gaps in a 2 days competency assessment? And they said, well, she has to do it if she must practice in Canada. So my question is this, is it, there's no how she'll perform that exams that will make her, like she won't meet all the identified gaps. The 34 competencies, she won't meet them in that assessment exams. So she's quite kind of depressed. She feels the whole process is just meant to make her feel inferior, or like just to reap money off you, because there is no how she would meet all the gaps. So why not just tell them you don't meet, like your credential is not comparable, go back to school for 2 years or for 1 year. Why make me go through an assessment exams when at the very end, you know, you'll still send me back to NBCC. So I don't know if that's something you want to take back to them, because I know a lot of nurses go through a lot of challenging situations. Like, it's challenging, it's traumatic for them. They went through years of education back in their home country, and now they've come to Canada. Well, they understand that there is no way their skill and education will be comparable, but making it mandatory to do that 2 days assessment exam, it's not just fair to most of them, because the outcome is obvious to everyone. Their performance in the exam will not make any difference than what the NNS advisory report has already said. So why make them waste $2,000? And in our own case, now the pandemic is on, she can't travel to Halifax, wasting time. Whereas in other countries like the US or the UK, like it's direct, you get it. So I don't know if it's something you can bring to NAMB or to any of the authorities involved in getting nurses' credentials in Canada evaluated, because I went through this whole struggle. It took me a while to accept it, and I know many people are going to see the same struggle. And it would be good, you guys in advisory positions are able to talk to NAMB and all those involved to be able to, I'm not saying they should losing their standards or compromise safety and stuff like that, but when you know the outcome of a process, why make people go through the long path, waste money, waste time, expose themselves to harsh conditions and stuff like that, when you know the outcome of the whole process.
And Philip, I'm recognizing your name. I think we may have spoken previously, but all your points, they're very valid. I certainly understand, where your friend may be coming from. But keep in mind, and this is what I'll add to it. As I said before, the advisory report from NNAS is just one indicator. And the reason, if I'm understanding properly, your friend is not able to supply all of the documents required. And so because of that, that report is saying that it's not equivalent because not everything is there. But at the same time, the regulator is not able to determine if your friend is even close to being a nurse. And so keeping in mind here that the main purpose is to have everyone who's in the nursing field practicing at their highest possible scope of practice. We want to make sure that if you have the skills of a nurse at the registered nurse level, you're practicing as a registered nurse. And that's why they're insisting that she has to do the assessment. The assessment piece will give them the indication they need to determine that, and as you said, the outcome could very well be that she needs to take the entire program. But the assessment will not only indicate that, it will indicate that she has a foundation which is strong enough that she can take that program and be successful at the other end as a registered nurse. Because there would be situations, and I'm not saying this is the case with your friend, but there could be a situation where the training that person has is so far removed from nursing scope of practice that the report is not indicating it because it doesn't go into that level of detail. That person, even if they took the assessment and then took all 13 courses, would still not be able to practice as a registered nurse. And that assessment will give an indication that, yes, this person has a high likelihood of becoming an RN. So for your friends, comfort, that's why it's not just about the money. And I can assure you that the cost, I know that they're high, but the costs that are associated with the assessments and with the individual bridging courses, those costs that are being charged to the participants and to the students are only about 50% of the cost of actually doing it. The government of New Brunswick is subsidizing the remaining pieces of those. So for every assessment where a student pays $1,700, the government of New Brunswick is also paying a significant amount of money for that assessment to happen. So it's not about collecting the money. We don't want to spend any money that we don't have to either. So we try to make sure that it's sufficient as possible. All of that, there's every case is different. So I would certainly, again, feel free to share my information with your friend, and I'm happy to talk him or her through where they are, to see what we can do, if there are any other alternatives for them. And as you said, in the end, it may be that this person would be better off just enrolling in a Canadian program as an LPN or a PSW or an RN, what have you. And that's always an option, but keeping in mind that those programs have very long wait lists. And you've already done a lot of training, as you've said. So we don't want to discount that training or disrespect that training. We know you've got training and experience, and this process helps to take the best possible advantage of that.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much, Rob, for the explanation.
Any other questions?
I think this will be my last question for you, Nicole. Well, just clarification with regards to the reimbursement. Reimbursement goes only once you have begin like enrolling in a university. Is that it? That doesn't include, let's say, like, for example, I myself had an account with Nnas, and that's a document screening. That doesn't include, right?
So let me see if I'm understanding your question correctly. So you're asking about the reimbursement if you spent any money within the last 6 months before applying.
That's only for credential, but I wasn't being. I'm not enrolled. It's just like my question is, reimbursement only applies once you are enrolled. Is that so? In a university.
It would be, no, not necessarily. So in the action plan, it could be that you haven't enrolled yet, right? So in the, but it would be part of that. It would be part of like the total amount of money that we would give the bank to reimburse you. So if you haven't enrolled yet, but it's on your list to do so, and you've already spent a certain amount of money, if you get approved, then first you would be starting like getting enrolled. You would be starting with your action plan, and you would be reimbursed for any costs you've incurred within the last 6 months.
Last 6 months. All right. Thank you so much, Nicole.
No problem. Any other questions? It doesn't need to be your last question, Wilbur.
Hi, everyone. I would like to ask a simple question about the loan. So does the approval takes longer time?
No, well, we can't control how long the bank takes. Normally it's about 2 weeks for them to review everything and to get back to us with an answer. That varies depending on, on a case by case basis. I do know that they are working on getting quicker replies to applicants. But on our end, we basically, we have a commitment to do like a turnover of documents really quickly. So 1 week or less for us to review anything that you submit to us and either approve it or decline it and tell you what you need to do to get it approved. So normally it shouldn't be declined, especially if we've been working with you to put together everything. And obviously we're always open for you to submit questions or anything like that. So it should be straightforward, but for the entire thing, I would say it's a quicker turnover than most loans, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So like, is there a chance to be rejected, or there were candidates that were rejected before?
Yes, and it would be because you financially cannot cope with having a loan. So that rejection piece is solely from the bank. We work closely with you to make sure that you have your file, everything is ready. So it's not because you're lacking any document or you're lacking a piece in your action plan or anything like that. So really the only reason you would be rejected is if financially you cannot take having another loan. So the bank doesn't want you to be more in trouble. If you're already in trouble, they don't want you to be more in trouble, right? And they want you to be able to repay everything comfortably and not to break you, right? Or break your bank account. So there have been people who have been rejected, and it's because of their high debt. They've had very high debt. There's one person who had almost $100,000 of debt, and to add another loan on top of that, given their income, it was the bank could see the red flags. So in those exceptional situations, they have been rejected. But this loan is flexible, so it does take into account your financial situation as an immigrant. Maybe you don't have credit history in Canada yet or anything like that. So it is more flexible than other loans, but there is a possibility that you would be rejected depending on your financial situation. I can't answer no to that question. So
Okay. Last question. There's another thing in my mind, like for example, could you lend like 1,000 or 1,500 Canadian dollars for a certain purpose, like a training? Then after like 2 years, you completed it, and the person needs to do again. Is it possible that you can lend the person again?
yes. So I say yes, but I think you need to keep in mind that this program has a time limit. So it is
Okay.
a federal government program that's running until 2026. And the first 4 years of the program is for giving out loans, and the last 4 years is to receive everything back. So enough time for the government to collect all the repayment back. And like I said, for some cases, it could be up to 4 years. So we can't give out a loan after March 2022. Unfortunately, if this program is successful, there could be a chance that it's renewed, but so far we only know that it's for only that amount of time. So right now, I would say there's more limit to that. So it started in 2018, and we can only give loans until March 2020.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We still have 10 more minutes.
Good night, everyone.
Hello.
I have really simple questions. Well, it's actually 3 questions, and this is very simple because I'm not from the nursing area. I'm taking this because my wife, she's a nurse, a registered nurse in my country, and well, she haven't landed yet in Canada. We're already permanent residents, but because COVID, we are stuck, So we're waiting, and we're just searching a little information about this. So thank you for the information. Actually, it's very helpful. And well, one of the main questions is before she land or she arrive here to Canada, what documents it will be like definitely like so important for her to bring here to Canada. And that's the first question. The second, it will be like I think you talked a little about that. Is her as a registered nurse? So as I understand, she's able to work at the beginning, at the beginning as permanent support or resident attendant or that kind, without any specific requirements or how that works. And the last question is about, well, basically about on those little, like, let's say, like, what is the name? The personal support or a resident attendant. same thing. Is there any kind of loan for any kind of specific courses, or you don't need that because she's already a registered nurse, or how it works? Just the simple question about that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. And again, when it comes to the healthcare professions in Canada, there's never such thing as a simple question. So I appreciate the complexities of what you're dealing with. Again, first, so that I don't forget, I would encourage you to please either you yourself can touch base with me and we can discuss specific details of your wife's situation. I can also link with the immigration team in her case, or have your wife contact me directly. And but the basis of your question, yes, she would be eligible to practice as a PSW, a personal support worker, or a resident care attendant, a resident attendant, because those are non-regulated professions. So with her background in nursing, she, as many of the individuals here this evening are, highly desired within the healthcare professional teams at both the long-term care settings and in the hospital settings. So there are numerous positions around the province. It all depends on where you're at. And obviously there are positions open in both English and French. So language skills also play a role in that. But the opportunities are there, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
There's participants asking for if you could also include your email address in the chat. Also, I will say that I will be in the email that I send you. I will also include Rob's email in that as well. Any other
Nicole,
questions? Yes.
sorry, it took me a second to find my mute button. You'd think I'd know by now, but feel free to I'll put it in the chat. But when you share that, because this is a select group and they've all taken their time this evening to come and join us, feel free to give them my direct email, which is Rob Parker, ROBB.PARKER @gnb.ca. I'm also responsible for the INIF navigation email, but that one gets a lot more traffic and it can be a little bit slower in terms of response time. So feel free to use my personal one as well.
Great, thank you, Rob. I'll make sure to do that. Any other questions? Is it okay if I take a picture of the group?
Sure.
How do you guys feel about that? Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, smile. Done. Thank you. Any other questions?
Nicole, thank you very much for pulling this all together this evening and for inviting me to attend. I've really appreciated the opportunity to talk with all of you. And it's exciting for me. I've been trying to send quick responses to some of the names that I recognize. So it's really nice. Some of you I've actually been talking to since July of 2019 when I first started this role. So it's great to see some faces and thank you again.
No worries. I'm so happy to see so many of you here tonight. So I think if there's no more questions, maybe we should wrap it up. How are you guys feeling? Going once? Going twice? Last call for questions?
Well, good.
Okay, so that's it for tonight. As always, feel free to contact me anytime. You will be receiving an email from me with my presentation, Rob, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing your presentation as well with the group.
Yes, absolutely happy to share that with you.
Great. And all the email addresses that you will need and contact, so as well as the recording. So have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.